Hello, everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Akin. I'm your host, Olivia Akin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We will give you real-life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top-notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Reverend Ricky Burton. Ricky became a reverend in 2013 and specializes in relationship coaching. Ricky has taken a non-traditional approach to ministry. Prior to working in the church industry, Ricky worked in public service, radio, and even comedy. You can find Ricky by going to his website, wrickyburton.com. Hello, Ricky. It's fantastic having you on the show.
Hey, how you doing? It's good to be here.
To start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Ricky Burton?
I like how you entered the show where you gave kind of two lenses of success, where one's kind of like personal and professional. And I really think for me, success is kind of what you made it, right? If you set a goal, and you set a target, and you've achieved that target, you're successful. And if you're in march towards that target, and even if the plan didn't go exactly how you wanted it to go, I believe that's a measure of success as well. And some people look at it at finances or how big or how much you have or something like that. I think it's, if you're achieving what you set out to achieve, I think you're well on your way, if not already successful.
I think that's a great key point right there, is sometimes it's also the journey you go down that can make you successful along the way. There's those small tidbits. Ricky, the church has always been a part of your life. How did the journey kind of start for you?
Well, yeah. So I grew up in church. My mother kept me in church. It's always been a part of my experience, and it's always been one of the primary communities that gave me space to develop and grow. As I say a lot, I was an introverted child, so I didn't necessarily like to be out in front of people and so on and so forth. But the church gave me those opportunities to kind of like sing and play drums and, and other things and participate in plays. And so that was the initial thing that kind of started that development to kind of get me out of my shell and kind of get me on, I guess, on this path that I'm on right now.
You touched upon for a moment there, kind of how it's been a community for you throughout your entire life, and it's always been there, and your mom kind of made you go for a while. How has that changed over time, that community grown as you've grown?
Oh, yeah. Well, sure. One thing I've realized, doing ministry in part as a vocation is like, you have, of course, your local assembly and your local assemblies, but then you have like the church is global, right? And sometimes that gets lost on you as a everyday regular parishioner. And so now, like you said, my community is not just the local assembly I'm a part of now, or even the assembly I was a part of in the past, but like I got friends, through just being, a Christian and being involved and engaged in church all across the country. And I mean that quite literally. all across the country. And some of my closest friends are actually, like I said, in different states and time zones and so on and so forth. So, I mean, the community is vast, and with anything, the deeper that you dig into it and the more that you, engage in it, the wider, your experience or your breadth of experience or connection with people will go.
I want to touch upon that a little bit more.
Sure.
So you have friends across the country that you continue to grow that network. How do you keep those relationships thriving and keep in touch with them and keep them growing and healthy?
Yeah. So one of the things I've learned in general, so to how you keep growing your network in general, is showing up. half the battle is being present and being there. And which is, oftentimes just, full transparency, part of the struggle that I've had, being bivocational, and, having a family and so on and so forth. The things that, a lot of my, peers can just show up to because this is their job. Because like I said, I'm bivocational. I can't always show up to. But when you're able, and this is for anybody, any type of community, whether it's a conference, whether it's a meeting, whether it's a networking event, whether it's a little party that, somebody from work invited you to, the opportunity presents itself, just show up, right? Being there is half the battle, and you'll never, you won't realize, the friends that you'll gain, the experience that you'll gain, and even just some of the incidental knowledge and information that you gain just from sitting and being in the space. Now for the maintaining of the relationships part, it's a bit dynamic at times. I have, of course, you in any, friend circles and things of that nature, you have friends who you're closer to than not. Those I'm closer to, I talk to more often. But I think, and I'll tell this quick story. The crux of when my closest friends, we got super tight, was when I had my kid. And so, like I told you, it's bivocational. So I'm up at 4:30, and then I'm not down until like 10 at the earliest, with meetings and all the things and work in between there. And so when I had my son, I was the one sleep training him because my wife was, going through, postpartum and so on and so forth. And it just wasn't working. Like I was driving and falling asleep. And so, and that's the beauty of having authentic relationships, because when I was just talking to some of my friends, they were like, okay, cool. Well, I had some friends who would call me in the morning and they would talk to me on my way to work just to keep me awake. And then I had other friends who would call me in the evening and they would just talk to me on my way home, from work. And then that became our regular, after, all the things settled, that just became our regular kind of routine. But, uh, I can't remember the exact scripture or saying, but the whole crux of it is that, friends are one thing, but brothers are born out of adversity. And it's when those key moments and those key points that, come in everybody's lives, the people who show up and who are there and who are present, um, are the ones that, become long lasting over time.
And I think that's a key point you brought up in your story, is showing up.
Yep.
Even if you're uncomfortable, even if you don't necessarily want to do it, other times you're going to want to do things more. But showing up and being present in the moment is so important, especially during a time and an era where social media and being on your phone, and there's so much technology and everything at your fingertips. Sometimes we forget to take a step back and be in that moment, whether it's with your friends, at a networking event, at community events. If you just show up and be there for that short period of time, you never know, like you said, what can happen. Another key point that you brought up was being authentic and telling your friends and your different circles of, hey, this is what's going on. I want to keep in contact, but like I have to move things around. And I think that's really important to making long lasting friendships, relationships, is that transparency. You had touched upon being an introvert. So when you have grown and used your tools in different situations, how do you take kind of being an introvert and step outside your box to be in the moment, be present, be active at these events?
All right. So in order to get there, I got to go backwards to go forward. So we'll cover a little bit of ground and I'll try to, round it out. If you don't know, for anybody listening, I talk in circles. So I'm going to start here. It's going to seem like I'm going out, but I'm coming back around. So needless to say, I like to call myself an introvert with extrovert tendencies, right? So I've found a way to learn to be out and about. And where that really broke open for me was in college. Again, I had just decided I played sports and all the other type of stuff in high school. College sports just didn't work out for me, and I joined a band, and I just decided that I'm just not going to be an introvert anymore. So out of all the things I decided to do, I was like, yo, I'm just going to do stand up comedy. And I Steve Harvey was like I don't know why, it was just like a model personality for me. I used to love the Steve Harvey Morning Show, and of course, I have a pantheon of other comedians who I absolutely love. But him, just his whole personality was like a thing. I don't know, that I felt like fit for me. And so I said, my first ever career plan was a one-step plan, and it was to be Steve Harvey. That was it. It was a
Very
one-step plan.
straightforward.
Yeah,
Be
very
Steve Harvey.
straightforward. One step, just be Steve Harvey. I just walk around with it on a piece of paper in my pocket. And so that's what I decided to do. And from watching, and like I said, I used stand up as a model for how I interacted in the world. So watching these, different people and different sets and stuff like that, and then creating my own and interacting with people on stage and stuff like that. That's really how I started to develop who I am. And so now to take all that, to bring it all full circle, how I translate, I mean, that's the core of my personality anyway. I'm silly. I like to tell jokes, so on and so forth. Now, my wife will tell you that I don't always tell proper jokes at the proper moment, right? But it's a great risk, right? Like, without great risk, great rewards. And some of the closest friends that I've gained have been me telling a risky joke in the right moment to the right person, and it was like an instant, oh man, this guy is a cool guy. So I'm not saying it works for everybody, but that's just always been that's always been, my MO. And as I've gotten older, of course, I've had to mature some and recognize what space I'm in before I say certain things. But at the end of the day, one thing I think people will one thing I hope the narrative would always be is that, no matter where I was, even if I had to tailor it down some, I'm always myself. And people know what they're going to get when they see me, and they'll know I'm at minimum. If you hang with me, we're going to laugh, right? We're going to have a good time. We're going to find something funny. I think that's how I move amongst those spaces, is being mindful of where I am, but also still, even still, being authentic to myself. Because when you try to play, something that I've also learned over my journey, and I'll close it on this, something that I've also learned on my journey is that when you try to adjust yourself to be like other people in certain spaces, that's when you fall short. You know what I'm saying? When you try to, like, oh, I'm gonna talk in my language. When you're in a bougie space and you're not bougie, you try to act overly bougie, and you try to act like something you're not. Like, people can read that, so you're better off just being you and allowing the people who ain't gonna like you, they ain't gonna like you no way. Mm-hmm. So they people find invalid reasons to discount and discredit people for any for a plethora of reasons, right? So our job as an individual is to let our light so shine so that others may see our good work and glorify God in heaven. So you be you be your authentic self, be appropriate for where you are, but be yourself. And those who are called to be with you, or those who will vibe with you, are the ones who will vibe with you. You're not meant for everybody, and that's okay. And that's a lesson that I have learned over time, through my path and journey and such.
And I think that's a key point that you brought up. Be yourself and don't try to fake it, because everyone will see through it. Yep. But when you are yourself, you're going to go to the spot you're supposed to be. You're going to thrive. When you're not, you're going to end up coming short because you're trying to be someone you're not.
Yep.
And the people who are going to like you are going to like you for you.
Yep.
You might try faking it and they still might not like you. So like, what's the point? No, I'm the same way. You tell jokes. I I tell jokes too, but I also keep it very straightforward. And that's how, like you said, with your jokes, sometimes they can be risky. But with me, it's sometimes I'm front, I'm going to tell you how it is. And sometimes
Yeah.
I'll put a humor to it. But people are like, wait, you said that? That's what we were thinking. I'm like, well, why don't you just say it? Because if you're like, why keep it inside if it could help someone
Yep.
or you're feeling it, get it out.
Mhm.
So you were in comedy, you brought that up, and that's a great point to go to next.
Mhm.
How did you get into comedy and then go from comedy to ministry? Because some could look at that as two totally different ends of the spectrum.
So again, talking circles. So I'll start here. When you're a communicator, right? It's all one thing I learned is that it's all the same thing. In stand up, I have an idea and I'm trying to drive that idea home and convince you that idea in a particular allotted amount of time. In preaching or in ministry, I have an idea and I'm trying to drive home this idea to you and convince you that this idea is, valid or true, um, over a period of time. So 10, 15, 30 minutes, whatever it may be. And so, that's the connection that I found. And so I'll start here. I preached my first sermon when I was 10 and I was like, nah, it's not for me. And so again, all the aforementioned things about, introvertedness and childhood development, church, all things. And so when I went to college, I literally just said, I am going to this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be Steve Harvey. Right. And somewhere in between there, I kind of felt that itch again. So I was doing stand up, I was doing college radio, and I was really going after it as best as I could. And while home for the summer, we got a new pastor at my church, and he was like, "Hey man, want to come drive the car for me?" So they have this thing called an armor bearer that I had never heard of a day before in my life, right? And so when he first asked me, "You want to be my armor bearer?" I was like, "For what? Like, who you fighting?" Like, I don't understand. I don't understand. But so basically, he would go different places, preach different places, so on and so forth, drive him, or if he had friends in town, pick him up from the airport whenever I was available. So cool. Like, yeah, whatever, free food. I get to get out the house. Cool. I'm with it. And I think really from that influence, that itch for ministry, came back. And also it was the exposure to, church and ministry as a vocation that I'd never seen before. I mean, I knew pastors worked, full time, but it was just like the synapses in my brain didn't connect on that concept until I met him. And I got to see people who work in that field and make a living for themselves. And, through, and also not just in ministry, but they take that and they pivot it to books and, podcasts or, whatever else they do. And I'm like, oh man, this is actually a thing. Um, and then at the same time, while I'm doing stand up, I've always gone back and forth between um, church centered or, Christian centered humor and just me being silly and ignorant and just trying to say something funny. And it was really just a search for me to find my center and find, that authentic piece in me. And it was one day I was writing through a set, which was a very controversial set for where I was at in North Carolina. And it was, picking at stuff in the Bible and so on and so forth. And, connecting the dots, just something just kind of popped in my head. It's like, oh, this is like the same thing. And I went to my pastor because, like I said, the itch came back again, and he was like, "Okay, well, there's something you want to do. We're gonna start you from zero." And he presented me with a book in a particular sermon development outline, and I took it from there. And the same kind of study that I put towards comedy, which was really just YouTube.
Very in-depth study right there.
Right. um, that's the same type of thing that I started doing from a preaching perspective, and just started, you know, like I said, building those new synapses and connecting the dots. And 10, 11, 12 years later, however many years, here I am. Yeah.
And I think that's a key point that you brought up, is sometimes you get the itch back, right?
Yeah.
So you didn't think that's what you wanted to do. You know, you've had different roles, a project manager, a comedian, been on radio, things like that. But when you were writing your jokes, that urge kind of came back and you were like, okay, this is similar. I'm connecting it now.
Yeah.
Let me try to do this. What do I need to do? How have you taken your comedy and your different experiences prior to ministry and applied that to what you do today and how you interact?
Yeah. So like I said, previously I used, humor as a way to draw people out and to connect with people. Right. And then that ability, much like you, to say the thing that everybody want to say, but don't, but won't actually, admit to or say out loud. That's always been a drawing factor for people to me. As well as it's a couple different layers. So from a presentation layer, I embed my technique of comedy or humor into my presentation. Because it's a way to capture people. And just in general, right? It is a tool for people. You don't realize stuff you're developing is actually a thing, or things that people do, until, like, you're already doing it. And then you go back and like, oh, okay, so I'm not crazy. I'm not doing anything weird. This is actually what people do. But, plenty of, public speakers and communicators utilize humor as a way to grab people and to keep their attention, because most people, their attention span ain't but for 20 minutes. They ain't gonna listen to you for 20 minutes. And also with the onset of content and social media getting shorter and shorter, and people's brains getting trained to that, that attention span is getting smaller and smaller. So you got to find ways to grab people. So from a communication standpoint, I always integrate comedy or humor into that, as well as a way to interconnect and work with people. From my professional vocation, being in leadership and project management and IT and stuff like that, IT helps me develop systems. And so the engineering mindset of how do things connect together, and how do I get an output from, how do I, develop a certain input to get a certain output. You can do that with human systems and with people. And so that's a lot of what I do as far as vocationally working in the church, is helping to develop systems so that we can get the proper output that we're going for. As well as, doing organization, leadership and stuff like that. From a working with people or leadership perspective, my focus is really on small groups and small teams. Because I believe leadership comes from the bottom up, vision comes from the top down. And I just do not believe that the primary CEO, leader, or whatever like that can do and see everything. They can't, right? And even though the primary leader has an overall horizon view vision of what is supposed to happen, there are pieces within that vision that are left for other people to come help fill and to help develop and to help shape. So that's my general, I'm going to use the word theology around leadership. And all these things have been from a culmination, like you said, of these various experiences that I've had over time.
And I think a key point you brought up is in the moment, you might not realize the tools you're gaining or
Mm-hmm.
the tools that will set you up for the success and happiness you want down the line.
Yeah.
It isn't always about, hey, I'm doing this for the immediate gratification.
Correct.
It might be, hey, this is a stepping stool to get to what my end goal is. But might also be like something as simple as, this sounds interesting, I want to learn it. And then
Mm-hmm.
4 years from now, someone goes, wait, you know that?
Yep.
And it helps you get into something you didn't know you want, or get a job you want, or something else. That has definitely happened to me. I very much believe, whether it's in schooling or learning from others, that something no one could take away from you is your knowledge. That's
Mm-hmm.
part of the reason we do this podcast, is for everyone to get those experiences and those stories and lessons without, always having to pay a tuition or a teacher to teach you.
Yeah.
Because everyone could be a teacher. But I strongly believe no matter, no one could take your knowledge away. So why not learn?
Yeah.
And I've definitely been in the position where I've had different roles. I worked in HR. I have some legal background. I have sports management. And I was in college getting these certifications. And I remember so vividly someone turning to me and going, well, why are you getting that? That's not in your major. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, but it could help me. I don't know when, but it sounds interesting. And if I want to potentially do this down the road, I want to get it now. And my friends who were going into that field was like, well, it's not on the job description. So why do it?
Right.
None of us need it now. It's not on any job you're going to apply for. And I was like, yeah, but if I want to grow, I'm going to need it then. And fast forward 6-7 years, they're trying to grow and become a manager, and they're noticing that certification you need is on every job. So now as people are getting married, they're having kids, life after college has grown. They're like, how am I going to fit this into my schedule?
Yep.
They're like, I should have just done it when I had the time, when I was in that mindset. So sometimes it's saying it's not necessarily going to benefit me in what I'm doing now, but it could benefit me down the road.
Yep.
Let's talk a little bit more about leadership. So what is your leadership style, and how do you show that and teach that every day?
So I know there is a list of particular like leadership styles, and by terminology definition, I can't remember them. I know like one's like laissez-faire, and the other one's like micromanager, whatever. I'm like somewhere in between there, right? And so what I'll say is, instead of giving you like the book term, I'll give you the I love this word, the theology, the belief system behind behind how I lead. I lead by this one phrase, or these two phrases: trust but verify. You don't get what you expect, you get what you inspect, which is not one of my sayings. I get that from actually from my mentor. I sincerely believe that if you have creative and you have talented people, to let them be creative and to be talented. You do not put the reins on somebody's creativity. However, you do give them a box to play in. Because that's how my brain works, right? I'm highly creative and completely random at times. But if I know my parameters, then you give me free reign within these parameters, and I can do what I need to do and how I need to do it. And so I thoroughly believe in that. For most people. However, there are some people who need a little more encouragement and a little more management and communication. And so I guess the summation is, you find a way to give people what they need and to tailor your leadership experience to what people need. Like I said, now I have my theology, right? I want people to be creative, to grow, and to expand their ideas, but everybody doesn't come out of the box like that. And so it's a means of encouraging people, giving people for those who need that development, we're giving them something that they can handle so that they can have success and feel success and know accomplishment and build confidence so that all the things that they're hiding in the back of their head and they won't say, that they'll start saying. And yeah, I think did I answer the
Yeah,
question?
you did.
Okay. Okay. All right.
And I think that's a key point you brought up is sometimes it's not just leading through the way that you think your leadership style should be or how
Right.
others should perceive it. Sometimes you need to be a leader by leading based on what that person needs
Correct.
and how that person operates, because it's also reading the other individuals you're working with and how they work well.
Yes.
You touched upon relationships, and being a reverend, you specialize in relationships and helping others in their relationship journey. How did it come to be that you specialize in relationships?
That's another interesting thing. This is not something that I wanted to do. Again, the recurring theme that seems to be happening in this conversation is you don't realize the skills and the things that you do and how they build upon each other, for the future. So I have always been, since, even in middle school, high school, the guy that people come and talk to about, oh, my girlfriend, oh, my boyfriend type of issues. I don't know why. I have no idea why, right? But I've always been that person. Um, and never thought of it as a thing at all. It's never been like oh, this is something I can do ever in my entire life. Hasn't been anything I considered to be a skill set or anything like that. Except for one time when I had a friend at work and we were talking through some of her patterns of, you know, boyfriend picking and stuff. And she was like, man, you should really write a book. And I'm like, no. Right. And part of especially as I got older, part of my hesitation was, um, I never want to be viewed as a relationship expert because I'm not. Um, like I got my own problems. You know what I'm saying? I got my own problems. I am yet figuring life out. And so to present myself as if I got it figured out, I never want to do that. And then too, I just feel like it's a bad omen too, to be like, oh, I'm a relationship expert. And then all stuff go wrong in your relationship. And then, you get big and, this is my fear, right? You get big and famous. And then, 2 months later, oh, Ricky's getting a divorce. And it's all over CNN. Like, no, right? So that's always been my inhibition. About it. I kind of got into it though. When I got my degree, got ordained, one of the reverends at my church, he recommended me getting into wedding officiant work. And so I never done it. I was like, all right, cool. That easy, simple, 15 minutes worth of work. That ain't hard, right? But then also I have a conscience as well. And I just can't marry people just cause y'all want to get married, right? I feel like the Lord, you know, puts me, cast judgment upon me if I just hook some people up that I know ain't supposed to be together, or I didn't even take the time to offer that assessment, to them. And so what I started doing was I was like, well, I'll use the framework for the premarital counseling that I went through, and we'll start there. And my first couple who wanted to book me for a wedding, I asked them, for $10, would you be willing to have these conversations with me and, allow me to figure out if this is something that I can even offer? And they were like, sure. And after every session, I would ask, okay, did you find this valuable? What was valuable about it? What was not? And, they provided feedback, but the overall sentiment was, yeah, this is great. Like this was eye opening, so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. All right, cool. And so up the price.
You
Up
cannot
the
buy it
price.
for the price of coffee anymore.
Correct. And I kept it, for each new person I onboarded, right? So it was $10 for them. I kept it at $10 for them. The next group of people was $30. And, started refining it. And then once I got to a foundation and baseline, then, I started to gather materials, gather book lists, so on and so forth to, make the resources more accessible, more consistent, make the sessions more consistent. And then once I got there, then, it at a point in time, it really became a thing. It was like 4 or 5 days a week, over a span of, a year plus, where I was down here in this space. I'm in my office in the basement, conducting, premarital counseling. So I was doing more premarital counseling than I was weddings. And I'm talking about people, California, Connecticut, Georgia, all over the place, basically, right? Yeah. And, and that's really kind of how it happened on accident. The thing that, the thing not a huge fan of Thomas Edison, because he was racist, but I do like what he said. He said, I only sell things that people will buy from me. And, that's what I had to realize when it came to my own personal business, right? There are a lot of things I don't want to sell, and maybe people will buy them from me, but maybe they don't want to buy them from me right now. People won't buy this from me. I don't know why. They're finding value in it. And I think it is valuable, right? So, to say that, so that's what I'm going to work on for the moment. And that's kind of how I got there. And yeah, I think I answered the question.
You did. You did a good job. You did a great job.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that some more in the aspect of, what do you try to have as a takeaway, or you hope individuals learn by doing these premarital counseling that, they might not think about prior to marriage, or that could be helpful for any relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I did, and I meant to say this in the previous long story, I reframed it from premarital counseling to premarital education, because I'm not a licensed therapist or a counselor. And like I said, I got my own issues. But the reason why I call it premarital education is because I do have a intention for people to learn stuff. And I intend for people to learn their partner and accept their partner for who they are. That is the foundational basis for everything else that we have conversation around. Because one thing I posted on my Instagram some years ago or months ago, I don't know when it was, but whatever it is you don't like about a person, get 10 times worse after you get married. So if you thought they had an attitude problem now, I don't know if their attitude gets 10 times worse or the experience is magnified to the 10th degree, but it gets worse after you get married, right? For whatever reasons. So to know your partner and to say, I love you, is to say that I accept who you are, where you are, as if the things that I don't like about you will never change.
And I think that's a very key point. And I think that's so, so, so important, is understanding whether it's a partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, significant other in any way, friendship, whatever it might be, is understanding that when you say you're a part of my life, especially a significant other who isn't going to necessarily leave, that you accept them. And accept the flaws, the good, the bad. There shouldn't be I like you except for these 5 things, but I'm going to change you in those 5 things, and then we'll be golden. Because and you could explain this more, but when you do that, you're not happy yourself, and you can make the other person not happy. And then you're both just become resentful And those habits don't necessarily change. Once you get to a
Correct.
certain age, you
Yeah.
get to a point in your life where you're like, this
Yeah.
is who I am. Like,
Right. So, and here's the reality. Two things. Most people, they marry their perception of the person, right? So they look at a person, they date them. Oh my God, he could be a good husband. Oh my God, I can just see her cooking for me every day, right? And so they create this image around the person and they marry the image, or the person lives in the image in order to get to a certain point. And then after like between 1 and 7 years of marriage, the image wears off, the beer goggles wear off, or the person gets tired of living in a falsehood, or the person changes over time. And then that's when all the drama happens, because one of the main complaints, you say you're not the same person that was when you married. Well, one or two things happen. The person grew up and changed. And of course, that's going to happen over time. Or you just didn't marry who you thought you married because you didn't take the time to get to know them, and to actually accept them for who they are. So acceptance is, like I said, the foundation of everything that I try to um, encourage everyone to do. Acceptance and managing expectations are the two big things, because marriage brings about a lot of unspoken expectations, and people believe, especially with Instagram and all the conversations that happen on all these different shows and things of that nature, to say, oh, man should be paying all the bills. Oh, if, a woman need to be cooking and cleaning if I'm paying all the bills. And, there are just so many conversations about who's supposed to be doing what and all this different perspective. And the reality is marriage is what you make it, right? And in order to create that vision, you have to communicate expectations and you have to manage them, because you may say everything you want, you ain't gonna get it. You're not gonna get everything you want. And you have to be okay with whatever the middle ground is. And also, it's never 50-50. I don't care what anybody says. Marriage is never 50-50. Even if it's never 50-50 in money, if it's 50-50 in money, it ain't 50-50 in time. If it's 50-50 in time and money, it's not 50-50 in effort. It's never 50-50. And again, managing and understanding, managing those expectations, I think, are key going into it, to give everyone a good start.
and I think that's a key point in saying you have to have acceptance, but also manage that, expectations you have for each other. And more importantly, or not more importantly, but just as important as you brought up, that transparency. Like, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I bring to the table. This is what I need from you. And that can change over time, and just have that continual conversation. What would you tell individuals who are working on, building healthy relationships in their life, whether it be with a partner or a friend, like anyone? What would you advise them, or say a good tool is to try to grow those relationships?
Reoccurring theme: blunt honesty.
There's a
um,
theme.
yeah, it's a blunt honesty. There is a book, and God, I can't remember the name of it right now. But it's on my book list on my website, and it talks about 4 types of communicators. Now, the book is really talking about IT management and how to communicate critique and feedback while caring personally. But all of to say, it gives 4 types of communicators. Basically, like somebody who's an avoider, somebody who does it all the way right, which is what she's trying to teach. But then she talks about this one type, and I can't remember the specific nomenclature she gives for it. But basically, it's somebody who's just like aggressively, obnoxiously honest, right? And everybody hates this person, but everybody appreciates this person because you know where you stand and you know what you believe. That is what is needed and necessary for relationships. And it is often one of the key things that are missing, because we often cover what we think in how we feel because we want to, uh, give room for the other person, or we're trying to please the other person, or we're trying to make the other person happy. The problem is how you really feel will always show up. It's always going to show up. And the reason why I know that is because that was a fundamental thing that me and my wife, we encountered, and even sometimes still encounter when it comes to me, because a lot of times I don't say stuff. I don't say things because I'm like, all right, it's cool. All right, it's all right. Yeah, it's not a big deal, right? Even though I feel a way, I just may not say it. And it doesn't bother me until something else happens, and then it bubbles up to the top, right? Or if I say I'm not going to do something, right? And I commit to not do it, but I still feel a different way about it, even if I still commit to not do it, because how you feel in what you say and what you do are two different things, right? The key is that you have to be able to communicate it, even if you choose to do something different, right? So even if I'm consciously making this choice to behave in this way, to do this certain way, to make these choices, I still need to tell you how I feel about it, so you will understand that this ain't natural for me to behave in the manner that you're asking me for, but I am choosing out of love to do this. And I kind of got lost in my circle, but I think that's the whole thing.
Well, I think that's a key point, though, is always you have to express your feelings, because when you don't,
Yeah.
they're still going to come up, whether it's now in an argument, or a conversation 5 minutes from now, whenever it might be, it's going to come up. And if you don't just talk about it and kind of resolve it, it's going to affect other things. Yeah. I do that sometimes as well, as I'm like, okay, not a big deal, but I take note of it.
Mm-hmm.
When you just accept me, you could tell by sometimes body language or this and that it's either frustrating, because sometimes someone doesn't know how to communicate that, but you have to, as the other individual might have to say, okay, I see you're kind of upset. How can I help? Or what's going on? Because sometimes it's those little things that in a relationship, whatever kind it might be, after time go, wait, this isn't how it's supposed to be working. I'm not being fulfilled. Why aren't I being fulfilled? And it's that moment that you're like, okay. And you've now wasted like how many months, years with a friend, with anyone, to be like, you know what? I could do without this.
Yep. And I'll say two things. Because you're triggering some of the conversations that I have. One, right, small things. The Bible says small foxes kill the vine. So that's in anything, right? It's the little things that really over time create the bigger issues. The other thing that I'll say about fulfillment, another thing that I push is you as an individual finding fulfillment and life and love and happiness within yourself and for yourself, and you not being codependent on another person for that. That is not love. That is not marriage. Your person, especially in a romantic relationship, is your partner in your happiness, right? So I'm a contributor to it, but I'm not the progenitor of it. And I think that is so key, because everybody's looking for somebody else to make them happy, and that ain't gonna work. And it's, again, conversation of growth and over time. If you dependent on me to make you happy, that's a guarantee that you will never be that you will never be happy, because I am never going to do everything that you want me to do, or that you like. Everything I do is not going to be pleasing unto you, right? Every choice I make.
And that's a key point, is you can't depend on someone else for your happiness, because it's not going to last. You have to be a partner in building that happiness. Ricky, how can people get in touch with you if they would like to connect?
Always, you can go to my website, wrickyburton.com, Instagram, wrickyburton on Instagram, Facebook, W Ricky Burton on Facebook. And yeah, you can, those are the main ways you reach out to me. Or Gmail. Guess what it is? wrickyburton@gmail.com. So everything you can search me by my name, and you should be able to find, all things needed to reach out to me.
Thank you, Ricky, for all of your insight today. A few of our key takeaways from today's conversation is half the battle is showing up. And it's so important to show up, because you never know what the outcome of that might be. Ask yourself, what do I need to put into something to get the output I want, I desire, I need? And that could be in personal relationships, but also in daily tasks, the day-to-day things that you want to create something. What do you need to put into it? Leadership comes from the bottom up, and vision, or leadership comes from the bottom up and vision comes from the top down. I think that's so important to understand. Anyone can be a leader. It's honing those skills, helping other individuals, those little things. You never know the impact it might have on someone else, and how you're leading by example as well. And the last thing is, you have to accept someone for who they are and not try to change them and make them who you want them to be.
Yep.
This was a great episode with our top-notch guest, Ricky Burton. Thank you for listening, and have a successful day.